This module examines the origins of Islam, the growth of the Islamic Empire, and the impact of Muslim trade routes to India, China, Europe, and Africa. This module supports the teaching and learning of World History Standard 5. Examine the political, economic, and cultural interactions within the medieval Mediterranean world between 600 CE AD and 1300 CE AD. This is a two-part activity. Part 1 of the activity will provide students with opportunities to analyze the origins of Islam and the growth of the Islamic Empire. In Part 2 of the activity, students will assess the economic impact of Muslim trade routes across the globe. At the completion of each activity, students will be able to answer the following essential questions. How do ideas change and spread over time and space? Why do cultures grow and spread? And how does geography shape human interaction, culture, and economics? In this activity, students will analyze the origins of Islam and the growth of the Islamic Empire through multidimensional analysis, and students will illustrate the economic impact of Muslim trade routes by creating an illustrative map. In the first of our 2 instructional activities, students will analyze 3 maps of the Mediterranean world. For this activity, you will need the following materials: 3 historical maps of the Mediterranean world. Of the 3, 1 map should illustrate the beginning of Islam. 1 map should illustrate the early spread of Islam. And 1 map should illustrate the spread of Islam at least 100 years after its beginnings. Be sure to remove the dates from each map for the student-centered portion of this activity. In this activity, students will be asked to analyze each map and draw conclusions based on what they observe. This activity serves as a hook, an opening, or an engage for any lesson about the rise of Islam. In pairs, students will discuss the following questions. Why do these 3 maps look different? Can you place these maps in chronological order based on your hypothesis? What do you believe has caused this change over time? Allow about 10 minutes for this portion of the activity. Once time has passed, have students rejoin the entire class to engage in whole group discussion. Have student pairs share their responses as one whole group. Students might come up with a range of responses to the questions. That's okay. Use these ideas to guide your reveal of each map and your instruction of this standard. As students share responses, require students to use the maps to support or defend their responses. Students should be prepared to share the correct chronology of the maps and respond to the probing questions. Then it's time for the reveal. Share with students that the maps illustrate various phases of the rise of Islam. Share each map individually with students. As you share each map with students, continue to ask probing and clarifying questions. This type of debriefing will provide the clues needed to help students complete the second portion of the activity. Let's deconstruct map number 1. Based on the map, can you identify the birthplace of Islam? Some students might be able to identify Mecca as the birthplace of Islam based on prior knowledge. Half students point to Mecca on the map. If Mecca is the birthplace of Islam, why is Medina identified as an area under Islam? Discuss Muhammad's life and his journey to Medina, which began the spread of Islam. Why is the Islamic Empire smaller than the Byzantine Empire or the Sassanid Empire? Student answers might vary, but we hope that students will understand that Islam started in one central area. As we further discuss map number 2 and map number 3, students will be able to analyze the origins of Islam and the rise of the Islamic Empire. How is map number 2 different from map number 1? What do you notice about the major cities highlighted on the map? What impact might location have had on the spread of Islam? Might there be other factors? Be sure to provide students with key information that pertains to the standard. Consider identifying the key events that occurred between 624 CE AD and 640 CE AD that may have led to the massive growth of the Islamic Empire. In 100 years, how has the size of the Islamic Empire changed? What symbol is hardly represented on this map that was prominently displayed on maps number 1 and number 2? Other questions might include, what can this map tell us about the movement and migration of Islam over time? Did these Muslim trade routes have an economic impact on other areas like India, China, parts of Europe, and Africa? Now that your students have had time to analyze maps, and you have had the opportunity to provide key information about the spread of Islam and the impact of trade on the spread of Islam, students are prepared for part 2. In the second of our 2 instructional activities, students will illustrate the economic impact of Islamic trade routes. Divide the class into 4 groups. Using the jigsaw strategy, assign the following groups: India, China, Europe, Africa. Each group will research Islamic or Muslim trade, trade routes, cultural exchanges, and economic impact. Each group will display its research on 1 or more outline maps, or a PowerPoint presentation, or using a platform like National Geographic's Map Maker. On the map or maps, each group should include the cities, nations, and regions impacted by Islamic trade, the time frame of their empire's interaction with the Islamic Empire, at least 3 major trade routes, at least 3 commodities or cultural exchanges for each trade route, and the Silk Road. Have student groups share their findings as one whole group. In an oral presentation, students will identify their assigned area, identify the cities, nations, and regions within their assigned area that were impacted by Islamic trade, identify at least 3 major trade routes between the Islamic Empire and their assigned area, and identify at least 3 commodities or cultural exchanges for each trade route. Once student groups have presented, debrief with students. Discuss the essential questions with students. How do ideas change and spread over time and space? Why do cultures grow and spread? How does geography shape human interaction, culture, and economics. Pose one final question for students. How did trade contribute to the expansion of the Islamic Empire? Concluding thoughts. Through military conquest and trade, the Muslim culture spread to the peoples ruled. The expansion of the Islamic Empire connected the world from China to Europe and into Africa. The many achievements of this culture contributed to the spread of Islam and the Arabic language, in addition to the many advances in science, government, and the arts. Many of these advances by the Islamic Empire have endured into modern times. The activities shared in this module can be modified to meet the needs of all students. The activities shared in this module can also be adapted to fit other world history content standards. Remember to utilize Georgia Department of Education curriculum resources to support your work with students.